Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on the Tribute to John. And I have with us a very special guest, Mr. Stuart Black, long-term director of the New York Institute and one of the pillars of our core community. Stuart, welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
So how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. I'm glad to be here. I hope I can make a contribution that serves what you're looking for.
Oh, thank you, Stuart. This is very personal. So, you've done many things over the years. You've written some books. You've taken many trainings and events. So I'm sure people around the world will resonate with you. But this is more some of the conversations I remember we had when you were down in Australia, speaking about your experiences, not only with John and the work. And it really was one of the inspirations for me in this, because I remember those. We'd hang out. And I thought, this is the sort of stuff that we'd like to use for John, if that's okay with you.
Sure, it's okay with me.
Great. So help me out a little bit. You're a man that's had many careers. I mean, how did you meet John? How did you come into the core energetics work?
Interesting question. I met John because I was in a marriage that was ending. And I met a woman that I was wanting to be with. Her name was Deborah. She was, she was in therapy with John, and I felt I needed some therapy to clear things up. So I had a session with him. To give you the very quick, short synopsis of it, he had me take off all my clothes, not all my, leave me in my underwear. He put me in front of a screen. He didn't say a word to me. He just looked at me, walked around me for about maybe 5 minutes. Then he sat me down and he told me secrets about my life that nobody knew. Like, so you don't make any sound when you have an orgasm.
That goes well with hello, sit down. By the way, you don't make any sounds.
So it was very John, and I didn't know him. But I felt that there was a certain magic. There was that he had something that I wanted to learn, And I joined, core energetics didn't exist at that time. This was 1970, early 74, 1970. And I wanted to follow his work. And the only way you could do it was to join the Pathwork.
Right.
So I became a member of the Pathwork. And I don't know, does that answer you how I met John question, or should I?
It sure does. No. But continue, because I mean, that was John and that introduced you to the work. So how did that progress for you? I mean, what were you doing at the time, and how did that lead into your further studies?
Well, and I was not a spiritual man. I was not interested in many things. I was interested in learning the magic so I could do it, and my psychopathy would feel like it accomplished something, I got very tricked into the whole thing because it's not anything of what it was like. I mean, I think the reality was, first the reality was that the Pathwork, Eva was alive. I don't know much about the Pathwork in Eva, but in any event, part of the requirement was going to her lectures. And in order to study John's work, you had to be a member of the Pathwork, and there were his core classes. They weren't called that, but there was a core A, a core B, a core C, and a core D. I was core D, the fourth class that John ever taught. And wow. After core D, they started going to call them, core 1, 2, 3, as it repeated. But it was a very profound experience. That was not the best learning about core energetics, because John was not the only teacher, and there was a lot of competition and insecurities in the teaching. But it was the beginning for me of learning about the energy in the body, and it was much more appealing to me than the Pathwork, truthfully. the pathwork is a conceptual teaching, and the core work was an energetic teaching. And I was much more into the energetic. It was more organic. So I loved it. And I did both at the same time. I was a pathwork student and a core student, or it was called Institute of the New Age. I was a student.
And so how did that transition from being a dentist, studying this magic, to then taking it further?
A good question. I think it became clear to me after some time. I mean, it was around 1985. I mean, this is several years later. I was nobody special in the core movement. I became a teacher. I was assisting with who then became my wife, Deborah, the woman that started all of this for me. And I think what happened is my mother died in 1985. And I became a dentist because my mother told me to become a dentist. And she said, becoming a dentist is a good thing. People call you doctor or whatever. And it helped me when she died to decide, what do I really want myself? And it wasn't, dentistry served a certain kind of purpose, but it's a whole different world than the world of seeking truth. And by this point, I had gotten more interested in spirituality and believed in God. And I asked John, what is it that I want to do something? What can I do? I'm ready. And he said, well, you're going to be with me. And it was very moving and touching. And I think that's what happened. I was with him. In 1987, I became the director of New York. He was the executive director of everything, and I ran New York. Whatever ran means. But I had a lot of creative ideas to create community and to create something that held us all together, because it was very scattered. There was no unity. There was no real connection with each other. There were classes that met on different weekends. They never got to see each other, so they never had a chance to make the community. That was a big dream of mine, to make the community. And John helped me do it. He gave me the power and the acceptance to do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's really inspiring, Stuart, because that essence of community that you created in New York filtered down to us in our training as well. And that's something that's a big part of me, as the people that I work with know, so that's nice to know that that's where it came from. This is the first time actually hearing of it. So that's pretty awesome.
Well, what I felt was that people learn better in groups, in community, than they do. You can't, when you teach somebody and first of all, they have a class that's in front of them and a class that's behind them, and you get to share where you're going and what happened, and all of those things, they create errors. Yeah. And that's what the work is about, really. Like the work of being a therapist is not how much you know. The work is how much you desire to bring the truth to what you're doing, to help people walk in the world as who they are. So that's a great definition
of I was going to say that's a very, very good definition of a spiritual dentist, I think, perhaps, like Michelangelo, freeing the spirit.
Well, I think that sometimes we get trapped in people's wounds,
Yes.
What their problems are, what the issue of the character defenses, instead of the core qualities, instead of seeing the people for who they are. And John was a master. John could say the worst things to you, and you love him because he was saying it from his heart, And I feel if you asked me what he taught me the most, that would be it. to be able to say truth, but with love, not with the desire to be better than the person you're saying it to.
Hmm.
And I don't mean to say I can always do it. I think it's a goal, but I think it's a very worthwhile goal. It's what he would say. It's about love. Love. It's all about love.
Wonderful. Yes, that was going to be my next question. What is it that really stands out for you in terms of the journey with John? Some of the learnings. So that's it. The love piece is awesome. In terms of for yourself, what were some of the interesting or the most memorable lessons that you got for Stuart?
Well, I give you an anecdote of I had this friend who was a psychiatrist, a very tall man, 6'6", around there, had pain in his back, severe pain. He'd had 2 back surgeries. He was in the hospital for a 3rd back surgery. And, why you laugh?
I remember this story, Stuart. It's such a cool one. Please keep going.
Okay. Yeah. Well, in any event, what happened is he was going to have another back surgery, and I went out to visit him in Arizona, and I asked the surgeon if it was a Sunday, that could he wait, and he said, of course, he's no rush. And so I flew him back to New York with me, and on Monday I had an appointment with John. That was my session. I was in therapy with John for 8 years, and I brought him into my session, and I said to John, this is my friend. He's going to have another back surgery. I think it would help him if he could talk to you before he did it. And is it okay if I stay in the room, because he doesn't know you and I'd like to be there? And John said, of course. And he did his John thing of walking around him and looking at. And then he gets real close to him, and the man can't stand up. He's lying down. He asks him, just please stand. And he's this giant. John takes his hand and smashes him in the chest. And this guy picks John up by his elbows, walks across the room, smashes John into the wall, and John holds up his finger in front of him and says, see? And he asking him about dramatic experience. That was, John used himself in the work. He used his intuition. He used his trust in God. He used his truth that what he would do would help somebody. And the man stayed with him for about a month and did a lot of anger work and never had the back surgery and did very well. So, it's a fun kind of story to tell, because it's very profound for me to have been there and seen it and know that it's the truth and not somebody telling a story.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And so from that place, Stuart, as you started to practice and actually teach core energetics, what was it in you that you felt started to emerge more and more, which was representative in a similar way to perhaps John coming out in his work?
Well, I think in the beginning, I was very focused on truth, but I had a misconception of truth, because I said truth in a way that was often cruel. It wasn't, truth needs to have love in it. It's like if you give somebody something because you want to be better than them, even if it's the truth, it doesn't help people. And I think in some ways I hurt people. And it took me some time to learn to open my own heart, to learn, like John would say, we would have lunch every Wednesday, and he would pray for the people who hurt him. And I'd say, come on, we don't pray for them. We want to kill them, And I never understood, praying for somebody that hurt you is for you. It's to get the poison out. It's like, it isn't, I forgive them, or it's about not wanting to hang on to these things that eat you up, because so it's a lesson about truth and love, wishing the best for people, because why not? if you can, why not? And I think the best example of it is for people who don't know you're doing it. You know, it's like you don't need credit for it. You just do it because it's the right thing to do. So, yeah, many gifts. I mean, John definitely, you know, he was my second father. It's interesting, both my fathers died. John died in February, my father died in April. So
wow,
they
that
died.
same year.
Yeah, the same year, 2001.
Yeah, it was a big year for you.
John was 80 and my father was 93, but they were the examples of fathers for me. One more, when I had my 60th birthday, there was a big party that the community made for me. And John would sit on one side and my father was on the other side. And they were singing songs about me that made me cry. So John says to me, "It's good, cry, cry." My father says, "Don't cry, don't cry." It's like both my fathers love me in their own way, you know?
How was that experience for you in that moment, to feel it on the both sides?
Yeah, it's like I feel the love from both of them with the exact opposite advice, you know?
Wow, that's beautiful, isn't it? To feel the love irrespective of the words.
Yes. And it's because that they both loved in the way they could. I mean, and John, I mean, I think the reason people remember him and honor him and want so much from him is because they felt his love.
Yeah. And so, Stuart, you said earlier on that when you came into this work, you weren't really a spiritual man. I mean, how did your spiritual journey develop to maybe where is it now?
Well, now I consider myself very much a spiritual man. I mean, I believe in God. I believe that we all have spirit guides that help us. I mean, a lot of it changed, you know, in the Pathwork. I did some intensives with John and with Eva. It's been a lot of years. I mean, 1973, 74, and it's, I'm not sure how many years that is, but it's at least almost 50, you know.
Yeah,
so
very close.
You know, so it wasn't fast for me by any means. I mean, I didn't, it was a process. And what changed it? I think just was being around in the community. It was being in the presence of seeing the differences. It was feeling the pain of my selfishness and my cruelty, my desire to be better than everybody else. You know, and I was in therapy with John for 8 years, you know, and in a group. So I did a lot of work, maybe once a week for 8 years and twice a month in a group.
Yeah. Well, that'll clear the stuff away, won't it?
Well, I don't know. No, I think what happened, the truth of what happened is John and I were becoming more colleagues, and then it wasn't right for me to still be in that relationship, and it became a collegial relationship. For many years, we were just best friends.
And so, what are you doing these days, Stuart?
Well, I run this center, and I'm still teaching core energetics, and I'm running classes for people who want to have a better life. And my wife does a thing called a temazcal. I'm married to a Mexican woman. Temazcal is like a sweat lodge. It's a Mexican version of it. It's a spiritual version. And people come and they spend the weekend here. It's usually 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They sleep here, they eat here. We have sleeping for 20 people. We built this whole center from, you know, just from the woods, and it's an amazing place. So I'm very, very fortunate. I have people come from other countries to do some intensives with us, and people that want to still see some of my work, they come. I don't know. I think I did I do intensive in Australia when you were there? I'm not sure if I did it at that time, but intensives.
You didn't do the intensives. You just did the workshops.
just a workshop.
But we spoke about your intensives at that time.
It's
Yeah,
just
yeah. I remember
three
we
therapists.
spoke about your
Fine.
intensives.
Yeah, it has 3 therapists and 1 client, and it's
Yeah.
intense.
Yep,
You know,
yep,
the people get the
Yeah.
therapist, and for them too. So basically, I'm still doing the work.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
I'm on a, you know, with the pandemic, I'm not letting people in, and I'm not so good on the internet, so I don't do too much. I have 1 client on the internet. So I'm waiting, probably not too much, maybe by the summer I'll be able to open things up again.
Wonderful.
I hope so.
Well, the core convention will be in New York. Excuse me, will be in Mexico. Yeah, this year. So we're not sure how much travel would be allowed, but definitely there's some talk of it being online. So that's also one of the reasons for this series, is to build up for the core conference and remember John as well, since it's 100 years since his birth.
Well, I hope it happens in Mexico, so maybe some of you can come visit me and see my place. You know, that'd be nice.
Most definitely. It's been way too long.
I'm an hour from Cancun. It's not so hard to get here.
It's very close. Well, Stuart, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate your memories. I'll be hitting you up to do some more of these, because we want to capture some of this long-term wisdom and humor that you've accumulated over the years. Thanks again for your time, Stuart, and for sharing your lovely memories with us.
It'll be my pleasure. If you're making a video, I'd love to have a copy.
Definitely.